Hi everyone, Adrian from Audio Excellence Canada. Hope you're doing well. So today we have a treat. We're comparing two Martin Logan models at the same price, but they're very different. So one is the new XTF-100 motion speakers, the floor standing dynamic speaker, and the other one is its sibling, the ESL-X, which is a hybrid speaker, electrostatic panel with a woofer. So quick story behind how we got involved. We were a Martin Logan dealer from a very long time ago, I think about 1993. But before that, I had already been a huge fan. As a matter of fact, I've owned multiple Martin Logans over many years. I heard the first pair of Logans, which I guess was 1987 or 88, which was the CLS. I won't go into the story, but suffice to say, I was so blown away by how good it sounded. It was a pure electrostatic panel. Maybe Mike can throw up a picture in this video and you can see what it looks like. I was so impressed by it that I gave up on my quest to buy what was back then, I thought, a dream speaker for me. At the time, a magazine called The Absolute Sound, which is still publishing, the senior editors were all talking about the speaker called the Infinity RS1B. It's a 4-chassis big speaker with separate towers for woofers and separate towers for the mid-range and high-frequency ribbon mid-range and tweeter drivers. And everybody said that was the speaker to buy. If you could afford it, that's the speaker to buy. But nobody in town had a pair. So I never knew what it sounded like until much later. Anyway, I heard the CLSs, fell in love with it, consequently bought a pair, and the rest is history. I still have a pair in my collection somewhere in the, I think in the office in the back. So fast forward, about 4 or 5 years ago, we were going to move to this location, but because there was an existing dealer here, we couldn't be a dealer, and so we parted ways with Martin Logan. About a month ago, it occurred to me that since the other dealer had to close their location, I thought I'd reach out to Martin Logan to see if maybe we should renew our relationship. Perfect timing. I saw Justin, who's the national sales manager, at the Montreal show, and we decided to go forward. And so about 2 weeks or so ago, we received a shipment. And we've been breaking them in, and I told the guys, let's do a comparison. And I don't think any of them had ever heard electrostatic speakers before, so I was very curious to see what they thought it sounded like. So that's the story behind this comparison. I chose the PS Audio Stella Strata partly because its price is in the similar range. The speakers are $6,000 each for each pair, so they're identically priced. The PS Audio is around about $4,500 Canadian, so it's sort of in this similar kind of a price bracket. I had originally tried the Name Nate 5SI, and while it sounded quite nice with the combination, I didn't think that it was quite as good, and so when I switched over to PS Audio, it was remarkably better as a comparison. So we decided to stay with the PS Audio. We used the Inuus Pulse Mini as the streamer, and the Audio Byte DAC with its dedicated power supply as the DAC feeding the PS Audio. Okay, go ahead, Ceci.
Okay, so it was my first experience of electrostatic speakers. First of all, it already looks really cool. It has metal grills on both sides, and it's transparent. You can see through. The look of the speakers of the ESL-X was really cool, while the Motion XT F100 was just like the normal speakers that we carry. And when I first listened it, I listened to the ESL-X first, the panel one, and it was insanely musical and clear. It was like the most clear sound that I've ever heard, and so the vocals was breathtaking clear, and also it sounded like it was in a big field. So as in like the walls of the rooms all disappear, I was brought to a very spacious field, as if like I was enjoying the music from like an outdoor concert or a patio. And I don't know, it just sounded very joyful and very sweet, so it made me feel very enjoying, and like my mood was very delighted and joyful when I listened to the panels. And I forgot to mention the song I listened was Sandy by Harry Chapin. So the song Sandy was actually Harry Chapin's wife's name. The song, I think it was sang to his wife. And while I was enjoying so much of how beautiful, how spacious, how joyful the music, the sound, the instruments was, when we switched to the Motion XTF-100, the cone speakers, the mood all of a sudden changed. It felt like much more intimate. So it was like in a room with the cone speakers, and then I could focus a lot more on the emotion and how the sound was thicker and the voice was richer. So that was the comparisons, but I really can't tell which one I prefer because they both sounded incredibly good to my ears. And the next song that I listened to was Cats in the Cradles, also by Harry Chapin. So the lyrics were actually written by Sandy, which is Harry's wife. So the lyrics tells a story of the missing father in the son's childhood. So the lyric says that he learned to walk while I was away. When are you coming home, Dad? I don't know when. The son always said, I'm gonna be like you, Dad. So as the son becomes older, getting out of college, the father begins to ask the son, I'm so proud of you. Can you sit for a while? He shook his head and said it with a smile. What I'd really like to do is to borrow your car keys. And long after the father was retired, he calls the son hoping to see him, and the son said, I'd love to, Dad, if I can find the time. So the lyrics was very meaningful and it tells a story. However, Chapin said that in his interview, the words haunted him, but even though it wasn't meant to relate to his personal experience. But what was a tragic that happened was 7 years after the song release, Chapin's son Joshua was 9 years old, and Harry Chapin died in a very bad car crash on his way to a concert with a transport truck, and he was only at the age of 39 years old. So knowing the background of the song has got me into the mood of thinking the story and thinking what Harry Chapin has been through and all of the work that Sandy has written in the words. And when I listened it, I think we listened it with the XTF-100, the cone speaker first. So the song begins with a very beautiful rhythm. The emotion was very deep and rich. And what was special about this speaker is that the bass was more dense and powerful. So all of the vibration and all of the air has put an effect for me, myself, that making me much more emotional. Especially thinking about the lyrics, how Chapin didn't even make it through his son's whole life or his childhood. And then when I switched to the ESL-X, once again I was all immediately amazed by the clarity in his voice, as if he was, when we listened to it, we had all of the lights shut and just two speakers on each side, and then I felt like he was actually singing right there in front of me, and it was that clear. So it was very, and what was very amazing was that with the panel speakers, the sound was very penetrating. So with the cone speakers, it was more like you're in a very small area and like in a studio or a more intimidating space, and then the voice saying to you, you are sitting at the best seat possible, you enjoy the sound for the cone speakers. And the panel speaker, it was like you're on the stage and the sound was penetrating right through your head or your brain. And then after that, I also listened to the Swan by Yoon Kwon-cho. She's a cello musician, and oh my god, this is you really have to listen to this album. All of her songs were amazing. It was like, I don't know, it was either the speakers or the song, but I think they probably have waved the magic wand on me. It was very magical.
Nice.
And so listening to the song with the electro motion was very magical. And let me explain it better. So the song begins with the piano playing in the background and the cello as prominent in the front as the main sound, and the piano is in the background. So when the piano is continuously playing, it felt like it was dancing in the water over my head. It's like numbing my brain, and then which made me feel very relaxing, and then and I could really enjoy the whole song. The room was filled with music. It was that good. You really have to listen to it, Louis.
Yeah, I will.
And then so I wrote down, it was such an enjoyment. Everyone who doesn't know the song, you have to listen to it. And when I switched to the cone speaker, the feeling of the speaker was different, as I was much drawn to the cello performance. The cello sounded somehow more sad, as if it has emotion, and the details of each draw on the cello was more obvious, and I could follow the emotion of the music as a musician jaws the bowl. That's what I felt at the moment. So these were my impressions to these two speakers. I really can't tell you which one I prefer. I think that either one I would be very happy to have.
Yes. Thank you. That was great.
Excellent. Started off with the ESL-X. It's a fantastic speaker, very smooth. It doesn't play dynamics as well as the dynamic cone speaker, but I would say for certain genres, it probably will sound a lot smoother than the dynamic speaker. What I really loved also is that it can play any genre of music very good. Started off listening to the song from the Tierney Sutton band, If I Only Had a Brain. That song, female artist singing on that lead, it was very, very good. Extremely airy. A lot of imaging, which is very good. Not outside of the speaker, like the dynamic speakers, but very, very good song. The reproduction is also very good. The production of the song itself is very, very good. The recording, is very good. I went on to play Desafinado by String Space. It's a group I just discovered a couple weeks ago on Tidal, and it's a fantastic group. I think I can definitely recommend people to listen to it. Female vocalist, is her voice is just so smooth, calming. I guess I like calming music too, but there's a sax part of it, which just reminds me so much like Stan Getz' original with the Brazilians singing that song. Fantastic. Something that you should go and listen to. Then I flipped on Nina Simone, My Baby Just Cares For Me. This song was recorded in '58, but it's for that era of recordings. This song it came out pretty good. One of my favorite songs to playing oldies as a DJ back in Jamaica, and her voice is so beautiful. It's not, her voice is just like so warm. And the song came out beautiful. The piano and the drums, fantastic. Maybe she was playing, I don't know, but maybe she was playing the piano because she's a pianist. So hopefully that she was one on that recording. The last song I played was Gladys Knight and the Pips, Love is Fire. I heard this album when I was in Florida in the 80s. And this song is so great. Gladys Knight is one of my favorite artists. She's been on top of the game from, I think, the 60s until now. She hardly records now, but she is really, really good. And it's one of my favorite female artists. So I flipped it now and changed over and then started to listen to the XTF-100. Wow. It was, the soundstage was so much bigger with the dynamic speaker that you could use a ladder and climb and try and touch the top of the soundstage because it was huge. It was wide. It was deep. It was center image. And I just thought, wow, this is probably one of the best imaging speakers I've ever heard. Also with the AMT tweeter, it just brought out everything, which I liked. And it's just, I think when I played back all those songs, it improved to me my liking of what I would like in a speaker.
Okay, that's great. So a couple of things to note first. So first of all, did you guys get a chance to try tilting the electrostatic panel? Okay, so just out of curiosity, so first let me explain what we're talking about. So way back, again, back in the late 80s, I knew this particular gentleman. He was a huge record collector. As a matter of fact, he got me into record collecting and almost bankrupted me because back then, to buy collectible albums, those were very, well, they're still expensive today, but back then, relatively speaking, they were huge money. And I wasn't making any money at all. So this was insane for me to do it, but I did. Anyway, both he and I had panel speakers at the time. I had a pair of the small Apogees, and then eventually graduated to the Apogee Scintillas. And again, Mike can throw up a picture on the screen so you can see it. He had the big ones. He had the full range Apogee in this ginormous room with big krells and so on. He had a system that I longed for. Anyway, one day he calls me up and says, Adrian, come to my house. You got to check out what I did. So I went to his house and everything looks exactly like it was 3 weeks ago when I was last there. And I said, what's the difference? He says, you don't notice anything? I said, no. He says, take a look at how the speakers look. And I took a look and he had moved the speakers so they're now vertical as opposed to canted back the way that the factory usually sets them. And I thought, that's it. Maybe he moved it by, a few degrees. He says, now listen to it. So because I had known his system for so long and had listened to it so regularly, I knew it intimately. And I was shocked at the difference. And in an ideal situation, I would strongly recommend, if you were to decide you want to buy the ESL-X's, try tilting them all the way vertical by adjusting the feet at the back and the front, and so you can get a vertical displacement. So sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, so I played a song, and with it straight, and then I tilted it back. And I prefer the tilt.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Also, the other experiment, what Adrian recommended, is that you stand between the two speakers and face the seat where you normally sit. And I found that I was hearing the sound behind me which I've never, with dynamic, I just heard everything. I didn't hear anything forward. I heard everything backwards. And I'm going, how did Adrian figure this thing out? I don't know.
It's like sound coming from over on the
behind.
behind.
I've never experienced this before. Yeah.
I'll explain that later. But what about you, Ceci? What did you hear?
I have a different opinion. I prefer the one that's more vertical. Yeah, it sounded like it's more, has more power or stronger or more dynamics, and then also the imaging of was taller comparing to the slanted.
Yeah, not much
Position.
difference.
Yeah, so that's something that you can definitely tweak.
Yes.
It doesn't cost anything. That's the cool
Right.
thing.
Right.
If you like one or the other, you can do it. So the Logans come from the factory tilted, and the reason for that is because panel speakers have a very limited vertical dispersion, and so what that means is that it produces very little sound, both to the ceiling as well as to the floor. And so if you are taller than the panel, when you stand up, you don't hear very much high frequencies as well. Did you guys notice that when you stand up, the highs drop off dramatically? And then when you sit down, all the highs are there, right? So so when they tilt the speaker, if you are standing 5, 6, 7 feet away, you will still hear some high frequencies. And so if you're walking around doing housework or whatever it is that you're doing and you want to listen to some music in the background, you won't find that you're missing very much. And then when you sit down, you hear all the highs. So if you do tilt it vertically, just realize that when you stand up, the highs are gone, right? It's just basically singing to your chest.
Yes.
But we'll get to the implications of that in a moment. But with regards to standing between the speakers and facing the chair and why the sound comes from behind you, it's because it's a panel speaker, so it produces sound both front and back. So if you're standing between the speakers, the sound from the back of the speaker bounces off the wall behind the speaker and then comes right back at you. And so you hear this delayed response, and you're primarily hearing the rear wave, and you don't hear the front wave for quite a lot longer. And so you hear, and so the reason that I discovered that, I was actually thinking about this again back when I was much younger. I was living in a very small apartment. We rented with 2 other students, and so I was in this very small 10 by 10 bedroom, very, very small, and there was no space even for a table. So I had a mattress on the floor.
And you still had your system?
That's right. So I didn't care about a bed and so on. In fact, I had no money for a bed. So one night, I know this is going to gross some of you out. One night, I drove around the back of these apartment buildings because somebody's always throwing out a mattress. And guess what I did? I went and I salvaged somebody's thrown out mattress. Yes, gross today.
Look at Mike's face.
When you're poor, you do what you do. And then I basically put 2 sheets of, what do you call it, mattress covers on top, and that was my bed. So I had no money for anything else, but I had a bed on the floor, and I had my hi-fi system. And because I had no space to put the panel speakers, I had to put them basically, 4 feet or so from the wall. And I thought, there's no way I can listen to these. So one day, as I was moving things around, the music was playing, and suddenly I was in between the speakers, and I suddenly thought, oh my God, I hear the sound behind me. And that's how initially, for quite a while, I listened to my music. I sat between the speakers, facing the other wall, and so the sound was coming from behind me, and that's what I did. Anyway, that's how I discovered that. So for me, I was very tentative about listening to the ESL-X because my previous experience with the other Martin Logans was so good, but they were mostly much more expensive speakers. They were the more expensive powered woofers, because Martin Logan, by the way, also makes hybrids where the woofers have their own amplifiers, and they are quite a bit different in many ways. The panels are also larger and wider and so on. So the ESL-X, I was concerned I may not like it, because there is a truism where if you take a great idea and you shrink it down, at some point you may lose the magic. And so I was worried that listening to the ESL-X's, I might be disenchanted.
So
right?
the ESL-X is not the top of the
No,
line.
not
It's
even close.
Oh,
So,
wow.
as a
I
matter of
wonder
fact,
how good the other ones could be.
behind you, that's a higher model.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
God.
so I was concerned, what if it got to a point where it lost its magic? And so for the first 2 weeks, all we did was just break in the speakers, and I purposely didn't want to spend any serious time listening to it. I dropped in from time to time just a quick listen, make sure everything's okay. So then when I sat down and listened to it, I first listened to the dynamic version, and was very happy with the results. It is a great speaker in its own right. Full, powerful bass goes all the way down. The highs, as Louis was pointing out, wonderful clarity. That the AMT tweeter is fantastic, and what's also nice is that the mid ranges blends really well with it, so you don't hear them as two different sources. There was really nothing to not like. I was really enjoying it, as also Louis pointed out. Soundstage is ginormous, big and tall, and very nicely defined with wonderful layers of depth and so on. So again, I was thinking, okay, the ESL-X is going to get killed. Also, if you look on paper, the numbers don't look that great compared to the dynamic drivers. So then switched over, and suddenly I heard this airiness and lightness and clarity and transparency, this openness that I wasn't getting from the dynamic drivers. Now, it wasn't necessarily that it was better in that sense, although I did like it. I preferred it in many ways. It was almost like a certain sense of heaviness was gone, and I could hear more. I could enjoy the sound. I was just startled at what an electrostatic does. But it's in many ways I should know, because we sell Magnapans, and everybody that hears the little LRSs for $1,400 always says, oh, it sounds so open and so clear. And that's because, again, electrostatic doesn't have the box, and so you don't have that kind of a coloration or box character.
Right.
So I started playing all kinds of different music. I won't bore you with all the different music that I played, but consistently they were two different perspectives. They're so different. The cone speaker had a richness and a mid-range beauty that was very beguiling and seductive. And as Ceci pointed out, it would draw you into the music, especially with acoustic music with a body like a piano or guitar or cello. You could hear the body beautifully. With the electrostatic, you didn't hear quite the same kind of richness in the body, but you heard the beauty of the strings and the beauty of the instrument still beautifully. And the vocals are gorgeous, and just a different perspective. I really enjoyed both. The other thing that I was also startled at with, well, here's the thing. I played a piece of music. I'll just give you an example. 16 Tons by Geoff Castellucci. It's just a voice with very low frequency. And with the electrostatic hybrid, you heard the clarity of his voice and the way he had little micro dynamics of how he phrased and so on. With the XTF-100, the dynamic speakers, the bass went so low it shook the room.
Yes.
It was incredible how it was able to portray the power of that music. It's a very interesting quandary, how to choose one or the other. And I'm not so sure. I know that if, well, let's get to that conclusions in a moment. So let's talk a little bit about the implications of the way each speaker is designed. So a typical dynamic speaker, the way the sound is radiating into your room, it means that your sidewalls, your ceiling, your floor, and the wall behind the speaker all contribute very strongly to the sound of the speaker. So, and that's why if you read all the forums, you talk to experienced audiophiles and some of the better manuals, they'll tell you to try and move the speakers away from the walls if possible, so that the room doesn't contribute as much to the sound of the speakers. With the panel, there is a misconception. There's this belief that panels are so much harder to place in the room because they need to be so far away from the walls and so on. But as I asked the guys to experiment, notice that if you stand between the speakers, there's almost no sound coming from the speaker at all. You don't hear them. You hear the sound from behind you. Right? And what that tells you is that the speakers don't radiate to the sides directly beside the speaker. They will radiate in a very controlled roughly about a 30-degree dispersion angle. So that means that if your speakers have to be close to the sidewalls, they will impact the sound less than a regular speaker will, because a regular speaker will radiate far more to the sidewalls. So if you have a relatively narrow room, in many ways, the electrostatic speaker may be a better choice because it doesn't impact the sidewalls as much. Same with if you have a short ceiling. If, let's say, you have to have the speakers in a basement where the basement ceiling is only about 7 feet tall, the speakers won't, the panels won't radiate as much into the ceiling, at the ceiling or at the floor, whereas a cone speaker will radiate far more into the ceiling and so on. So you can, in fact, consider a panel speaker in a smaller room. The only caveat is that with the panel speaker, you want to give it about 2 feet or so minimum from the back of the cabinet to the front wall. And that'll give you more sensation of depth and for the speakers to disappear better. So that's the only caveat. So let's talk about conclusions. I know you both said you couldn't really choose. If I made you choose, what would you decide? Based on the kind of music you like and your kind of particular preference of taste, what would you choose?
I would take the dynamic speaker.
Okay.
But as I said, I think the panel, if you're listening to some like MP3s or whatever it is, if you're streaming or, the panel probably will work better for you. If you don't, the AMT is not that it's overly bright or not, but it brings out a lot. So that's a word of caution.
By the way, that's a very good point. I was listening to Holly Cole Trio, and that particular recording is recorded a bit hot. The sibilants are very noticeable with her voice. And to your point, when I played the XTF-100, you could hear more emphasis on the sibilants because it's in the recording. You're hearing what they mixed. With the electrostatic, it wasn't quite as pronounced. Yeah, so that's a good point. Ceci?
Well, to me, this is such a very difficult to choose. In my previous videos, I always talk about how I am much more attached to speakers that can do the emotional part. But the electrostatic, it's so special, it's so different, and I like it so much. This time I think I would choose the ESL-X. The sound, it's just very special and very joyful. Every time when I listen to it with the ESL-X, it puts me in a joyful mood. It just makes me very joyful. So
good. Before I give you my final opinion, one other thought with regards to the two speakers. The XTF-100, the dynamic speaker, overall, for a lot of people, will probably be easier to integrate because it looks like a regular speaker. Most of us are used to regular speakers. You can just put it into a room, and it comes in, I think, 3 different colors, so black gloss, satin white, or walnut. So it's easier to just integrate. And if your room is asymmetrical and you're not the kind of person that's really fussy about placement and so on, you can just stick them there and they'll give you very good sound already. With the Martin Logans, they are, I'm going to be politically incorrect, they are like a very high maintenance spouse slash significant other, right? Mike is laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. Mike is whipped like me. So it demands that you pay attention. So for example, with the dynamic speaker, you can stand up, you can walk around, you can have friends over sitting on a long couch, and everybody will get very good sound, right? With the Martin Logans, you have to sit in the center. If you move off to the side, you will lose the magic.
Now it's still, for it.
That's
so
right.
You get
exactly right. It'll still sound very good, but that magic is only there when you sit right in the center. As we pointed out, when you stand up, the magic's gone, right? With the dynamic speaker, you stand up, it still sounds beautiful. Yeah. But the Martin Logan says, pay attention. I'm here. I need you to pay attention to me.
It's okay.
Right?
We will all fight to get that.
Right. So that's a Martin Logan. adjustments to make sure that the speakers are at the right distance from you, both the left and right, will pay off in dividends. By spending time and moving the speakers from the wall and making sure you don't get boominess and so on, it'll pay, again, dividends, significant dividends, because it can be so good. Just the idea about adjusting the rake of these speakers will pay off in dividends. So it is very fussy, or can be very fussy. So if you know you're not the kind of person that is interested in being fussy and so on, maybe don't get the ESL-X. The other speaker will be a better choice. For me, the electrostatic hybrid is my choice because there's a special place in my heart for my first truly high-end speaker, the Martin Logan CLS. And this gives me a lot of that beautiful magic, and in some ways better, because it does do bass, whereas the CLS doesn't. So for me, this would be it. Having said that, this is me hedging my bets now. As the guys will tell you, these days I don't have a lot of time, and so I don't have the time to be as fussy as I could be back then. If I were to buy a pair of speakers, and if I bought the ESL-X, I would take the time and I would fuss with it until I got it beautiful and magical, and then I would leave them alone, because they can be that good. So anyway, that's my conclusion. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
Come on, guys, go to our YouTube channel, and so we can continue to support charities.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell them. Yeah. So probably people have signed off by now, but for those of you who don't know, we get money from YouTube because I guess lots of advertising gets on our channel. So the money that we get, Audio Excellence matches it, and then we donate it to charity. So thank you for watching and for supporting us. And please, yes, subscribe and like and share so that we can do more charity work with your behalf. Yes, Ceci?
Yeah, remember to check out our new website, and if you find anything, let us know in the comment below, and we will work on it to improve our website and everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyway, thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. So we're going to sign off. Adrian from Audio Excellence, Louis, Ceci, and Mike. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.